Recording in progress.
Practice. Calling the meeting to order. At this time, we'll start with roll call.
Lisa Pierce,
Here.
Ken Lee,
Here.
Joshua Somanite,
Here, thank you.
Phil Carter, and Alex Goodman.
Here.
And with that, we do have some absence of Zeno Ambrosia, Mayor Diana Rich, and Councilmember Maurer. So we do not have a quorum in person, so we cannot take on any action items today.
Did you mention Emmett is not here?
Oh, Emmett, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I went right over him.
That's okay. Yeah, so today we'll only be able to discuss items, no voting because we don't have a quorum, but I think we can move forward anyway. With a review of action items.
Yes, thank you. Minimal action items from last time around. We did forward a proposal for revised committee structure, quarterly meetings, Zoom, but not live stream. I'm sorry. We forwarded our proposal. And then there were a few items that got tabled for further on the agenda, which are coming up today: RCPA, zero waste, and public events.
All right, thank you, Joshua. Do we have any comments from the public today regarding items not on the agenda? Oh, and we are pulling from the agenda. So I guess then it technically becomes an item not on the agenda. The rights of nature we will not be discussing today.
Okay.
How does that work?
So the items not on the agenda, we should still go to the room in first and then Zoom. And then,
yeah, I'm just saying, like, do I add, like, if we're pulling something from the agenda, then it goes into this category. Like, I want to give people a chance to speak to rights of nature if they want to, because it's no longer on the agenda because we're pulling it, we're tabling it.
I don't believe that would be, because this is before
Okay.
that.
Okay.
I think that is
Okay.
the correct policy, but is that okay? Yeah.
At
Sorry.
any rate, does anyone from the public have any comment about something that is not on our agenda for today? I see none. So we'll move on to statements of conflict of interest. Does anyone? We don't have any voting items, so it doesn't really matter. And on to our planning department report.
Okay. So a few development projects, and then I'll let David go forward with his update as far as it relates to all groups and committees within the city. The Canopy project, which is the 80-unit townhome subdivision that's behind the O'Reilly office park at the north end of town, was approved by the Design Review Board at their last meeting in May. We will be the Woodmark project, on Bodega Avenue, which is the 84 units. Two of the four buildings are already constructed and are getting close to occupancy. Those final two buildings out of the four are looking at towards about the end of the summer to be finalized. So they're looking at formal occupancy of those four buildings, which is roughly 48 units by the end of the summer, early winter. The
Can I ask a clarifying question? The four buildings are still just phase one of the project, correct?
Yes. In phase one of the project, it's 4 total buildings. So half of those are essentially constructed, and then the other 2 are just about to be completed. The Huntley Square project, which is just a little bit further down on Bodega Avenue, has pulled their grading permit to start their site work. That is another 10 units on Bodega. That project's, if you don't know, has been around for quite some time, so it's good to see them moving forward. The Hotel Sebastopol has the Planning Commission did make a recommendation for their development agreement, which would extend an additional 3 years, which is the recommendation of staff. That is going to City Council on July 2nd. The Barlow has also submitted a hotel application at the Gyaki building. Some of you may know that they submitted an application about 1.5 years ago and then ended up withdrawing it, but they have submitted another formal application. I just completed and sent them the completeness letter, which kind of gives a letter to the applicant on items that are still needed before we can deem their application complete and start with a formal process on that. And the Caltrans Sustainable Transportation Grant that the city was awarded, we did move forward with a consultant, that's Fair and Peers. We have a contract signed with them and are going to be looking at starting kind of their kickoff meeting here within the next few months. So we're in the process of putting together some key stakeholder groups. So if you guys are aware of any groups, please offer them to either myself or David, and we'll make sure we get those to the consultant.
I believe this committee has extended itself as a key stakeholder group.
Okay.
Yeah, John, I'm just wondering if we are going to have an opportunity, hopefully soon, to meet with the people doing this work, just to
As part of the CAC or as a stakeholder group?
as part of the CAC, I suppose. I mean, we do want to talk to them about some things. So I'm just wondering how the best way to handle that might be.
I think it would be helpful to include it as part of the stakeholder meeting group. I know that their budget and scope was only geared towards planning commission and city council meetings. I don't believe a climate action committee meeting was included in that. So through that stakeholder meeting, and then I believe there's also a technical advisory committee that needs to be developed as part of that grant. So that could include, members of this group. So I think once we get the kickoff meeting started and we have a path moving forward, we can start those discussions.
Do you know if they ever received the letter that we sent?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that was.
Because I'm just curious, for instance, if there's any kind of talk about how much of the money is going to be spent looking at a two-way street option versus some other options.
I believe that was communicated to them and as something that they, could potentially look into as far as how they're calculating cost.
But we don't know how much of their time is going to be devoted to that.
No.
Okay.
Not
So-
as of right now.
Yeah, I'm just, the planning commission, I know that they're going to be pushing for the two-way street. At least some of the people there are. And I just want to make sure that they get some kind of balance in what they're hearing from the city.
Yeah, and that's what myself and the consultants are trying to accomplish as part of this stakeholder group, is to get a variety of opinions and not just one specific group.
So will you just keep us posted
Yeah.
then about, okay,
Yeah.
thank you. That's great.
Is the contract, just for clarification, I don't want to assume, but generally the contract would be written in such a way that the results of the stakeholder engagement would inform where the bulk of the time of the consultants went in terms of what avenues to explore.
I don't know if it specifically notes it in that kind of detail, but it could be a component that is either modified or adjusted to mention that.
Did you have something you wanted to add, David?
I guess, my addition to that is we do have a contract and we do have a scope of work, and that's our guide at this point. So I want to make sure that we don't raise expectations beyond what's been approved. I think, as John mentioned, the stakeholder opportunity is a chance for you all and others within the community to provide your input, and that will be taken into consideration in terms of doing the work. The letter that you provided has been forwarded to the consultant. So it's a very public process. Your positions will be shared and be part of the process. But I don't want to suggest a modification to the scope when we have an approved scope of work at this point.
Yeah, yeah, trying to let people know that like one of the times to mobilize public engagement is early in the process when the stakeholder engagement is first happening, as opposed to later on. Anything else from you, John?
No, that is it.
All right, David, you
pass
have
on.
the floor.
So just an update. Go ahead.
I would just like to, on the Woodmark project, I was recently made aware that it was borderline net zero. And I was kind of curious if we could be informed about how environmentally responsible it is, because I did hear that it was really well done. And I think that should be known, and we should, understand it so that buildings going forward, we can also hope to achieve the same level of building quality, So if you have any facts on that, that would be great.
Yeah, I'll have to look through the documents that we have for them. I know that was a project that was worked on by Carrie and a planning consultant that started before I was on with the city. So my knowledge of that project is limited. So
If you could expand on that, what are you looking for in terms of sharing that information? Is that a report back to your committee? What are you looking for? We can certainly do the research and share, but at what level, what are you looking for in terms of sharing that project and what it's been able to achieve?
I would like to share it with the energy group and the transportation group so that we have some understanding of the quality of work that we're guiding in planning, to the level of our net zero goals. And if this gets us closer, that's positive. And I would like to be able to include that in our data so that we can calculate how close we're getting to those goals. Because as we calculate the inventory, our emissions inventory in town, we will need to figure out ways that we can get closer and closer and closer. And if that nets some progress, that's super helpful to know about. Then we don't have to worry about that so much as some other buildings downtown that need to be retrofitted and things like that.
I might also suggest, if I may, that you guys aren't necessarily responsible for that research, and maybe that there's a point person at the developer who would be only too happy to share that sort of thing, understanding that we're trying to understand it and appreciate it and be well informed on that subject.
Understood, and thank you. We would do that.
I just want to second that that's not a requirement either. Yeah, I'm not trying to work you over.
No. We'll see if we can't locate that information and bring it forward. Kind of transitioning, just a bit of an update. I know that our staff has reached out to all committees, commissions, and boards of the city in terms of, I'm going to refer to it as the reorganization that we've been discussing with all of you as far as the budget review process, kind of looking for opportunities to streamline, improve processes, and cut costs, reduce costs with the budget gap that the city is experiencing with this budget. And all information from your group, including your recent letter, have all been given to the city manager for his review, and he's working with that information now. So at this point, all suggestions, recommendations, comments, feedback from all committees, commissions, and boards has been passed forward and is being taken into consideration. So at this time, we don't really have a report back in terms of what's going to be recommended to the city council. So we're not quite there yet, but the information that we've received from all of you has gone forward. And I know that the city manager and executive staff is looking at all options in terms of trying to close the gap. So at this point, we continue forward in terms of the regular meeting schedule, et cetera, until we hear otherwise. So that's my update. Go ahead.
Just understanding process. So you guys are going to review.
Yes.
And then are you going to bring the recommendation to city council and city council is going to vote on it? Or do you guys have the executive order to establish something? Just trying to understand how that
Sure.
process.
The process would be that the city manager and team that's working on the budget will put together a recommendation to the city council. It's working with a budget committee, budget subcommittee, and the recommendation from the management team and subcommittee would go to the full city council as part of an overall budget, and the city council ultimately would make that decision and then direct back to staff what to do. So in terms of things like combining, certain groups, planning commission and the design review and tree board, which is being considered, or having Zoom only meetings, or reducing staff attendance, reducing the number of meetings, the things we've been talking about generally with committees, boards, and commissions. We would be looking for the council's direction back to us as staff and then implement. Does that help?
Yeah. Do we have that on the agenda for a city council meeting yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
The council is looking, I'm going to say, potentially at, I believe, July 16th, potentially. I say that because it's a tentative date. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for David? Thank you for being here, by the way. All right. So we're rolling right along. It seems as though we have no city council report. And so we'll move on to our regular agenda and start with working group reports for activities not on the agenda. I believe somebody has something.
Yeah, so I've been, for the transportation committee, I've been focusing on how we can make this a more bikeable city. I've come across some data that 40% of our trips are less than 10 miles and come from within Sebastopol, and they're usually linked mile per mile per mile. Like I'll drive 1 mile to school, then 1 mile to Safeway, and then 1 mile back home or something like that. And so we can significantly decrease the amount of mileage we have on our roads, which includes traffic volume on our busy streets in front of Annalee and down 16 and 12, by moving towards an e-bike philosophy. Preparing roads for e-bikes and places to park and things like that. So I've been wondering how we can promote a more bikeable city. And, of course, there's Bike Sebastopol, which is part of this. And one of the things that I came to is bike parking. And as a bicyclist myself, I bike with my family to baseball games, to soccer practices, to schools, I bike to go grocery shopping, in a little bit, and downtown and everything like that. And I am always hitching my bike to something firm that's not a bike rack. And I have come to Safeway, and everything is in the sidewalk. So I was like, oh my gosh, I'm parking in the sidewalk. This is uncomfortable. In the Barlow, there's only a couple. CVS is an example of a beautiful parking place, which I think is new and fits the modern code. But retroactively, I don't know how to advance bike parking, which I think will make it more comfortable and fun for people to come down and park, like a bike corral or something like that. And one of the ways that I was thinking about this isn't through policy or through code. It's more through adopt a parking place kind of feature where businesses say, I would like to sponsor a bike rack. And then, personally, I might, or have Bike Sebastopol individually solicit businesses to see if they would participate in this Adopt a Bike program. Or alternatively, later in the fall, approach a design class in the high school to see what their thoughts are about it, see if they would pursue research and to figure out how we can make this a little bit more of a bikeable city. But considering we're basically 2 miles by 2 miles by 2 miles or so, everything is bikeable. There's a modest couple of hills, but there's no reason why we can't all bike. Given our weather in the winter, maybe, but most of the year, this is California. And I grew up biking in Colorado and Seattle, where things are much worse, much hillier. So it's entirely doable here, given the size.
Can you clarify, just because I'm not able to track all the threads. I understand there is like a master bike plan, right, happening also parallel. So how does this fit with this?
Okay, so concurrently, so this is all synergistic. And as environmentalism is, or as sustainability is, it's connected to almost everything, every single thing. And transportation is a system that includes the greater county and the state and micro traffic. And the county is holding an active transportation plan right now with Fair and Pierce. We are about to have an investigation on our transportation policy. And then there's just generally what we can already start to do.
Sorry, when you say we, who do you mean?
Oh, the city has a grant, Fair and Pierce just won. And that's what we were talking about just earlier. And so I apologize. So there are 2 official studies on transportation happening at this very moment. And a couple of us on the transportation committee have been active throughout the process for both the counties and this coming one. And we have a member of our committee that's also part of the active transportation meeting group that happens once a month or something like that. And we get reports. But it's based on corridors and how we can solve like Santa Rosa to Guerneville, not just Sebastopol, how we can solve Petaluma to Guerneville and Sebastopol. So it's like large areas. And they have a map where a lot of different possibilities pop up. And one of the more frequent comments that we can address as just something simple that doesn't cost money, that is helpful towards the beautification of downtown, is bicycle parking. We can't really install $800 signs, or we can't really involve curbs, especially if it's a California road. And we need to pave our roads, so we can't really ask for too much as far as that goes. But something we can do is address bicycle parking.
Through the chair, if I could ask John maybe to give a brief description of those 2 grants, just so that the public and all of you have a little bit more information about those grants and the scope of work under those grants, please.
Sure. So I'll start with the active transportation grant, which is a county level project that is going on. And then each individual city is part of the 9 cities in the county, excluding, I believe, Santa Rosa and Petaluma, because they are handling their own. Each city is kind of getting their own update to the bicycle and pedestrian master plan, which is what it used to be called and is now changed to active transportation plan. So that is a process that has been going on for the last year. Procedures component of that. So we have done some initial studies and looking at existing conditions, got feedback from members of the public. And then with that feedback, the consultant has drafted programs and policies and things like that to address those needs that the community has provided us, like bike sensors on certain intersections that aren't picking up certain types of microphone or certain types of bicycles or bicycles in general at all. So things like that. That's currently in the process. The kind of end of that project is February of 25, so next year. So that will have kind of a final active transportation plan for the city of Sebastopol, so city limits, and then how we can possibly implement those upgrades to our bicycle network. The Sustainable Transportation Grant looks at the kind of downtown Main Street 116 corridor and how the pedestrian and overall activity and safety of that can be changed through a variety of options. One of them is obviously the two-way option, but that's, just one of many possibilities that can be explored. So those are kind of the two projects that Phil had mentioned, or studies that are underway. I know that the transportation group has been involved immensely with the active transportation plan, because I see them out there and I appreciate their comments and work. And if there are other members of the committee that maybe don't have the time to come out to an event or something like that, I would please submit your comments to either myself or the consultant group to get those concerns taken care of.
Phil, what is the next step that the transportation working group is thinking to move forward with this idea?
In terms of parking,
Well, I mean, are you asking for feedback from the group? Like for your report today, like, do you want to have an agenda item for further discussion? Are you just letting us be aware that this is a path you're going down? Like what?
kind of both.
Yeah.
So in all honesty, A, it's not a fully fleshed out idea. And so B, I would, I'm soliciting advice from the general public, if you would like to, or you guys, as a sounding board, right? There's only so much you can do in isolation. It sounds like a good idea, but then you have to flesh it out and bring it and see how it sounds, like a sounding board. Sometimes, you can develop an idea and bring it as a policy, but then it's no good. That's a lot of time. So I kind of just rather go ahead and ask you guys if this seems like something that's worth your pursuit, or what you might offer me for suggestions, or how we might go like different track, or how it might fit better in some other ways with other things that we're doing, these kinds of things. So yeah, I'm just letting you know for advice purposes.
Does anyone want to comment? David?
Through the chair, a suggestion, and you may be doing this already. We often do this in our work, right? Checking with other communities that have put in place, say, corral bicycle parking programs, and getting that information as kind of a base to look at different examples from other communities and bring that in, so that as a group, you can see what others have done and what may fit here in Sebastopol as a possible next step. No doubt, a lot of communities have done some really great things that this community could learn from and use.
Yeah, and that's great advice. And I have already done that. At some point, I would like to pitch it. Go ahead and give a pitch deck and show you what other communities have done and what's easy. That's actually where I got the Adopt a Bicycle program from. It comes from like Portland. But we will definitely do as much homework as we can before the next proposal, before we do anything more. We'll just pitch it and see how it goes.
Well, anything that we can do to improve active transportation is definitely within the purview of this committee and part of the stated goals of this committee. So I say bring it. Let us know.
Feel free
Let
to
us
send-
know when you want to do your be on the agenda for your pitch.
Okay.
I'll recognize Joshua, and I also just want to remind members of the public that you're welcome to ask to speak.
Yeah, just a couple of quick personal comments. Emmett's on transportation, right? Okay,
Yes.
so I know that he's an active bicyclist. I myself live a little outside of town, can't bicycle into town for fear of death, so I'm not super expert on this subject. Really like the idea of soliciting businesses to engage with that.
Mhm.
And on a further side note, once upon a time in grad school, I went to Copenhagen, studied how they'd implemented their bicycle commute program, which was substantially more systemic.
Mhm.
But one of the things that came up one of the last times there was a transportation study on downtown about 10 years ago was that the traffic engineer who came in noted that Main Street is much wider than it really needs to be.
Ours.
Our
Yeah.
Main Street, yeah, specifically substantially wider. So there are some wasted feet in those lanes that might be claimed either for sidewalk extension or protected bike lanes inside of parking or some something like that. So there's a broader conversation that we could have another time.
And that I hope shows up in our upcoming grant, but we'll see.
So I think this was before both of your guys' time, but about, I think it was 10 years ago, there was a downtown study called SDAT, which must be fairly well recorded, where it was an
They
AIA
have it.
subject. Yeah.
The consultant has it.
Okay, they
Yep.
have that already.
Yep.
So great.
Yeah, a lot of the old studies and stuff like that has that. There was also, I believe, W-Trans did a fatal flaw analysis of the two-way option for Main Street that the consultant has as well. So all of the information that we have and that I'm aware of has been passed on to them. So
All right, thank you. Any other working groups have something to discuss that's not on the agenda? Yeah, Alex.
I just made some notes here. I know Steve has been asking for this, so I just wanted to clarify. So I don't know, what was that in April? Or when, of what event, when was the Bay Run event? Was that April? I should know, but anyway, so we had low attendance, and I just wanted to make some notes about what I think I noticed and what could be improved upon for the next event.
Alex, for clarification, you're speaking about the event for consumers, correct?
Bay Run.
Because there was a
Yeah,
separate one
not
for
the contractor
Okay.
event. Yeah, this is the consumer. Yeah, this is, yeah. So this was presented by Bay Ren and mostly facilitated by Bay Ren. They had their own kind of, we'll call it marketing, but there's more that at least I could have done or we could have done to promote it. And just comparing this to the years previous, the climate engagement series, that event.
Alex, I don't want to. We do have a agenda item for you guys on strategies for promoting public events.
Oh, we do.
Is that?
Oh, I'm
yeah,
sorry.
Sounds like that's where you're going.
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay.
I didn't know we had that.
We'll
Sorry.
just put
Okay,
that on
thanks.
hold
Perfect.
for just
Sorry.
a
Pause. Time
couple
out.
minutes. All right. Thank you. Anything that's actually not on the agenda? Does anybody need me to say what is on the agenda? It's all here. So I think we'll just reorder since Alex started rather than. Oh, yeah, go ahead. Recognizing Steve. From which of your working groups are you representing?
We'll say energy, but it's actually a follow-up to the water that I talked about in the last meeting. As you well know, the city's in the throes of deciding how much we're all going to see an increase in our water and sewer bills. And I believe the first vote happened, the subsequent vote is coming, and we're looking at initially around a 35% increase, somewhere around there. And I did do some follow-up with Bayren has a program that the city has been part of since 2021, the SAVES program, Water Saves. And they actually have some results on their program. And they gave it to me, but they also showed an interest in presenting to the committee. And I believe they sent that request along. No, didn't see it. Okay, well, that's something I think that would be good to follow up with and have Chris Cohn, who is the Bayern representative that runs that program, come and speak before the committee. And it's a timely thing with they're looking at expanding to landscaping, although they have been saying that for a few years now, but it's in the plan. And I think it would be good for us to hear it. Water conveyance is not like a big part of our greenhouse gas inventory. It's 1%. So it's not a biggie, but it's a timely issue. And we know that water going forward is going to become more and more of an issue. Thanks.
Thank you, Steve. Anyone else from other working groups? All right. Any members of the public want to address anything that was mentioned? Is that a hand up over there? All right. So we'll move on to, we'll reorder, and we're going to take up agenda item D to loop back to what Alex started to speak about. Then we'll move to the RCPA report from Jojo. And I think that's really going to be it for most of our agenda items, because unless we need to discuss this, I don't think we have any new proposed changes to the committee structures or cadence at this time. So we'll go back to you, Alex.
Thank you. Sorry about that. So just reiterating, this is about the consumer event that was held in April with Bayren. We partnered with Bayren essentially. So a couple things that we did on the original event with the climate action, the climate engagement series, was we made paper flyers with a really nice logo, and we put those coherently across the public in actual paper form. And we also put those on all the online event spaces. So it was very clear. And I think, maybe there was some congruency in people seeing those across multiple places. And we did that at least, I would say, about 3 and 3.5 weeks in advance. I think that really helped. We also gave out free pizza that event versus the other one. I don't know how much that really swayed people, but it is something we did. I tried to submit a Bayren newsletter to the city through Holly, but I know that due to budget constraints, they weren't doing newsletters as frequently, so we didn't get one out. So I think just planning farther ahead, I think that was at least 3 or 4 weeks out, but for some reason, maybe I don't know if there's an updated schedule on maybe when those are going out, but just understanding the frequency would be more helpful to get those out way in advance, so we get on one of them. And I think, we still posted on Facebook everywhere. Bayren also posted on Facebook and created an event, but I think having those flyers, having those congruencies really helped. Doing things more in advance, I think at least a month in advance for marketing is going to just be a major key to promoting those events. To whoever is, whether it's, you guys, it sounds like you guys did a great job, but just on the consumer side, really making sure people are clear. Giving something away free or making it clear that there is something free always seems to bring people. And there were free things. Even if it was just some silverware from Bayren, at least that is promoting that there are giveaways. And then the only other thing I could think of is getting a big email blast out, and also getting a Sebastopol Times article if we can to promote. Just so we're getting a little bit of a different demographic or a wider Sebastopol demographic. That's what I got. And Phil, it sounds like you might have some things to share too.
Oh, I just want to mention that Bayren and was it Sonoma Clean Power that did yours, or was it Card?
It was Bayren and Car, the county organization. Yeah. Actually, technically, it was more. Yeah, it was both of them.
So I feel like one of the things that we could have done better with that, and I was with them on this, is we let Bayren do too much. We relied on it a little bit much. We could have done more on our side. Is that fair?
100%. And I think it was a good contrast to see how much that marketing. I think part of it is just takes a lot of time to do that, but it's well worth getting people out there. If you're going to throw an event, you might as well. So I think it was relying on them, but understanding I didn't want to double up all the work they were doing, but I think we just because we have a different demographic and scope, and it's really a localized event for each area because they have so many different groups in the county for, every area. We really need to rely heavier on what our resources are to get the message out.
I'd been at a Bayren meeting maybe 2 years before, basically the same topic, and they had about 30 people show up, but a decent attendance, and it was in the library, and I think that provides a little more visibility and opportunity to do flyers or whatnot, and there has all that foot traffic.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure, I think you had checked into the library venue.
The whole reason we helped was because the library declined to host the event for whatever reason. So maybe it was a bad date or whatever that was, but
maybe that's what we need a little more follow-up with is it may be, yeah, like you said, a little more lead time for the library, because that seems like the venue is pretty key on something like this. So that's
And
it.
then also, we shouldn't be too hard on ourselves because a lot of rebates went downhill. I mean, this is just a generally different economic period too.
Yeah, I think the rebates becoming more justice and like focused reduces the availability of them to our particular community. So, anyone else want to say anything about public engagement strategies?
There it is. Okay. So I'm just wondering, I know we have quite a long email list, right? There's the compost giveaway. People had given their email for that. I'm not sure if we can use those emails for also sending events, or if it's just for the compost giveaways. That's a question I have. But also I was just wondering, did the email about this event go out to it did. Okay, great.
It could have gone out earlier. I think what I would do is maybe not every week, but I would send it like a month out and then like 2 weeks out and then maybe like a few days out, just to get really in front of people, because it's just that the more that you can be notified and plan accordingly, the better. Also, I guess my question for John Jay would be, do we have any idea of a newsletter schedule with Holly? Are we doing newsletters at all, or do you know?
I believe we still are. I think it's at the discretion of the city manager right now. So it depends on, what that availability is. If there's, we can create a news posting on the city's website, and people that are, subscribe to certain groups or anything like that through the city can get those notifications. So at least that's something. And, I'm comfortable with Zuzi being able to take care of that as long as the information is provided to her. So all it is just doing a simple upload. I would not be comfortable having her draft the entire, news request. But yeah, so I think that's another option.
And just like, is there any kind of ballpark, like maybe once every 2 months we're doing a newsletter, or is there any frequency that we could follow? Because I think if we have 8 weeks notice to send out to Holly, we'll hit at some point before the event if we give her 8.
Yeah,
is that fair to say? Or we don't know?
I can reach out to the city manager and see what the frequency on the newsletter is, and then that way, if it is 4 weeks, 8 weeks, whenever. You guys have an idea.
But the news item thing is great too, because then it's more of a dedicated short email that people get.
I think too that there hasn't been an article in the Sebastopol Times for a while now about electrification. So there have been some changes. A lot of people aren't aware of the county's resources. So I bet you that Laura Hagar Rush would welcome, especially if it's kind of handed over to her. Like members of the public are welcome to write articles. So that's even easier for them if it's just done, and she might do some editing, but she's pretty likely to print that.
I think doing one about car and how our Sebastopol citizens can leverage that would be huge. So I think I can connect with Dory and see if there's a way she could just give me a little insight and just make it really clear what the resources are, because it's extensive.
It's a wonderful resource that I don't think very many people are aware of.
Any other questions or comments about public engagement strategies? Public is welcome to weigh in. All right. I think this about just myself weighing in. I think the Sebastopol Times is an important thing. It always to try to engage, and you know, it's hard to get people to events. But I do think that a follow-up article about CAR, because half of the benefit of that event would have been getting people to be aware. So maybe we could say, okay, we still have the goal of increasing public awareness of this. One question I did have for you guys, at some point within the past year, we discussed trying to do more synergy in our public events with the Rajos Institute and leveraging their audience and their cadence for some of our public events or us supporting their public events. So I don't know if that's still in discussion or if that kind of,
I haven't talked to Dina, but anytime she asks to promote an event, I mean, we do that, but I mean, they're just doing such a good job. I think it came down to like, I just don't really see how, at least I could help. They just don't, need much. Maybe they want to get on the newsletter, but it doesn't sound like that's maybe not quite the right venue. So I could definitely check in with her. I'm not sure how there is a way to help her unless we have an idea of maybe doing an event together or doing something. But I'm open.
So I just want to add to that another one of the things about the Climate Action Committee is we're kind of like the go-between between private organizations that do a whole lot more and then the city council. And one of the things that I'm taking on personally, and Zeno is too, and we've got some other members, are reaching out to some of these organizations that are already doing some really good things, like Bike Sebastopol and Brauhaus, and they're already holding meetings. So we're just going to make sure that we are known to them and they have an open door with us. We're a venue, to achieve, to help us all build a better, more beautiful town.
great, thank you. So we will move on to our RCPA report from Joshua.
All right. Let me start by saying that I feel woefully underprepared and underqualified to carry this agenda item. Nonetheless, I think we can muddle through. So some background to that is that Zeno and I both sit on the RCPA's Climate Action Advisory
Can you
Committee.
define RCPA for our public members of the public?
Sure. Regional Climate Perfection Authority, an organization in Santa Rosa that exists to essentially pull in grants to do county level planning around climate resiliency, transportation, et cetera. They're really well networked and a lot better funded than we are. So they have full-time staff and multiple resources. And so Zeno and I sit on these quarterly citizen meetings, which are in large part about catching up with each other. RCPA sort of tells us what they're up to, and then each of the 9+ municipalities in the area report back to RCPA what we're up to, and there's an attempt at coordination there. And so part of this agenda item is just talking a little bit about what RCPA has been up to. And then there's another piece, which is about how can we link up better with RCPA in our activities and sort of support their work and piggyback on their work. And I would like to acknowledge that there's also other folks in the room, particularly including Steve, and I believe including Phil, who have also talked to RCPA as part of the working group activities over the last few seasons. And so I'm by no means trying to hold the sole speaking part of this topic. And I think hopefully we can bounce ideas around. Zeno would have had plenty to say. He is sick today, so he opted to sit out on this particular one. And we'll probably start the conversation today and then pick it up again as well next meeting. So back to the RCPA, what they're up to, kind of frame of reference. Their last meeting was in April, and then previously in January, the ones that we went to. They are currently in process of slowly launching a countywide climate data dashboard that is a really nice web interface that's searchable through lots of different kinds of information. That is being built up to be more robust and more editable, such that you can cross different kinds of statistics locally and get a map that will reveal trends and that sort of thing. So that's very much in progress. They're also very much involved in the countywide Climate Action and Resiliency Comprehensive Action Plan, which is coming up. It is supposed to be reaching completion this coming fall. And as a part of that, there is a carbon stock inventory and sequestration possibilities study that's an aspect of that. And there is some interest on their part stated in getting more recommendations and from the Sebastopol area, and for folks who are informed and make suggestions that to be folded into that plan. And also, and essentially that carbon dashboard, the climate action dashboard, is gradually getting updated with various data sets that roll in, including, for instance, the recently some 2020 statistics about carbon stocking maps throughout the county are going up, and they're also tracking the stated 2030 goals for emissions reduction. So there's a whole bunch of pieces coming together that they're managing. In large part, they are taking on countywide policy recommendations and trying to make a countywide guidebook that then gets somewhat specified for communities within the county. And it's that particular aspect of looking at how the county data and how the county trends translate to local actions in our municipality that I think is the place where we have the most potential to interface, both in keeping an eye on their recommendations as it might apply locally and also contributing to their local recommendations. My understanding is the metrics group met with them earlier in the year, and that RCPA is very interested in having our input on these sorts of things for those folks who have the extra time and engagement to dig into that. And I think at that point, I'm going to go ahead and pause and see if other folks have things to add or questions.
That was a good synopsis, Joshua. I think one of the bigger things that they looked at over the last year and a half, you all may be familiar with this or not, they embarked on what would it take to get some real money in climate action at the county level to do things that they want to do. So they started a public process and assembled it was more than a laundry list of ideas. There was some specificity to it. And then they went out and surveyed residents in the county and found that there was not sufficient support to pass any kind of regional climate fund by taxpayers. So I think they got just over 50% approval, but anytime you say funds are dedicated for a specific purpose, in California, you need 2/3 approval. And that's kind of put the kibosh on that whole approach. And short of that, the RCPA, at least in my view, becomes more of a every 2 to 4 years producing the inventory report updates on our greenhouse gases. And that's a very valuable resource for sure. Last time I looked, the city of Sebastopol, I think, spent around $13,000 a year towards the RCPA. You know, that may or may not be a substantial. It doesn't sound like a lot of money to me. And the way it works is all the cities are chip in towards that. And it's part, I don't think it's a joint powers authority. I'm not quite sure what the legal structure is. But it's kind of in a weird situation here locally. We have BayREN, we have the Climate Action and Resiliency Division from the county, we have RCPA, and we have Sonoma Clean Power. Those are the four main actors. And in politics, if you follow the money, because that's where the juice can happen, RCPA is not where the juice happens. It's Sonoma Clean Power and the county at their Climate Action Resiliency Division are the ones with actually have some resources. And then Bayren is funded at more of a regional level, and they are bringing some resources to the table. So I think the RCPA sees themselves as sort of a conduit for bringing together the collaboration of those various actors that I just mentioned. And yeah, I think they do a good job of it, and we can assist them, but I'm not sure that given that sort of resource, follow the juice issue, is that our time best well spent if we want to make a difference at the regional level. I think I'm going to still be doing it, even if it's not time well spent, but it's kind of come to my attention that if we want to make a difference, then it could be that we try to follow more what happens at the Sonoma Clean Power level and at the county level. Inventory reports are important. We definitely need them, but I don't see it becoming much more than that over the next few years. And they have shown interest in working with us as a city on certain pilot projects. They put us in years ago for funding a pilot project for curbside charging. So we had shown an interest in that. Recently, the whole metrics stuff, that they are interested in working with us. They see their follow-up on their metrics dashboard as, let's try to get stuff a little more tailored to the cities. And they saw Sebastopol as maybe being one of the first cities that they work with to do that kind of city level metrics that we can go beyond what they're intending to produce initially. So that's encouraging. We can work with them on that. And they also are working on an electrification strategy, kind of an equitable electrification strategy. That's another possible avenue for working with them. And I tend to do that too. So I'm not trying to dump on the RCPA, but we need to recognize their limitations. Thanks.
Yes, Phil.
I just want to add to that there are so many layers of advocacy for sustainability, and they're all over the place. And I'm still trying to piece them together. And to bring synergy with these groups is helpful. But I'm seeing a lot of wheels spent at every single level of government. I think one of the most important things to me, though, is to bring it back to resiliency. If we're going to do sustainability and resiliency, we need to bring down electricity prices, because being able to pay for AC is just as important as being able to prepare for an eventual fire or something like that. And having our businesses thrive and be able to pay power bills and water bills. I mean, these are important things. And they're things that aren't mutually exclusive to climate action, right? I mean, these things can help each other. Where RCA, the energy group, and you just mentioned this, contributed quite a bit to them, and maybe kind of like opened their eyes to a few ideas about how they might work with us. And since we're such a small town, we have the ability to adopt things kind of easier than some larger, more, I don't know what the right word is to say. We have fewer moving parts in our city to deal with. So, yeah.
A question really through the chair to Steve, maybe. Steve was talking about Sonoma Clean Power and Sonoma County Resiliency, and really those being entities to maybe work with, team up with, synergistically. What does that look like in terms of the city of Sebastopol? What kinds of opportunities might there be?
I think one of the main opportunities is that we have representative on the Sonoma Clean Power Board, Council Member Zolman, and we can approach Council Member Zolman with researched ideas of what we think would help improve our strategy for going, dealing with climate action and resiliency. So that there are oftentimes those might be the same ideas that would be pushed at the RCPA level, but given that Sonoma Clean Power actually has resources and staff people to work on this stuff, that it's the same, we can think of them as a public body just like the RCPA, and go to their meetings and present items from our Climate Action Committee. I understand that we don't necessarily have the city council's buy-in on those ideas that we present, but I guess that would be a question back to staff. Is that an appropriate use of committee time and resources to research and advocate for policies at that regional level that don't go through the city council, but go directly either to the RCPA or Sonoma Clean Power or CARD? I hope I answered your question.
You touched on it. And I think in response to your question to staff about, the committee, it's always important to look at what is the city council directive in terms of your roles and responsibilities in terms of interactions with other regional committees, boards, et cetera. So I would just, defer to, I'm not quite sure at this point, being, here just a short time, what council has given to this body and other bodies in terms of authority to reach out and interact. Oftentimes it's more at a council level, and council is providing direction back to your advisory group. So something to look at and learn from.
So,
Well, go ahead. Okay. Well, we actually have interacted with both of those groups quite a bit already. We've met with, I'm blanking out on his name, Sonoma Clean Power.
Jeff Cyphers, CEO.
Jeff Cyphers, thank you. Yeah, and also we've had CARB people come to events and present information. So that kind of thing has been going on.
Can I make a clarifying statement? There's a difference between trading technical information and providing information between agencies, between this committee and those agencies, versus advocacy for policies. And advocacy for policies would be something that we would not be doing without direction from council. Whereas technical information sharing is something that we would be doing, because that's just
So
doing
I
our
guess
work.
my question would be then back to you, sorry to jump in there, but so I don't think the council is going to have the time or the resources to get out there and make decisions on these. So if something comes from our committee to another entity, another public entity, is there some issue there? We're saying it's not the city council, this is our committee voting and saying, here, we're passing this information on.
We can pass information on, but we can't advocate for policies. So there's a difference. So
Yeah.
between those things. And Alex said asked to be recognized first. And
I think
I have a little bit of a different direction, so I can wait until this discussion is.
go ahead, Joshua.
I would just suggest that the bit that Steve just mentioned, where we explained that we're not speaking for the city or the council, but that we are a committee of engaged citizens who've been at this for a while, and that it's sort of from our deliberations there that we may be advocating for something or other. The policy issue, I'm not trying to speak to that, but saying that there's a separation between speaking for the city versus speaking from the committee.
I'd ask for clarification from staff on this right now. My understanding would be that as a city body, we can't speak separately from the city. So if we like a citizens group could speak separately from that's making recommendations to city council could make a differentiation between those two things. But as a city body appointed by the city, we have no ability to separate that. But I'll ask for clarification from staff.
I would agree with that. I think that as a group, as a committee, you could discuss a policy position and make a recommendation to the city council, and then the city council would decide how to proceed with that and take action, whether through a council member or go back to you. But I would agree when it comes to policy matters and advocacy, it's really at the council level. Exchanging of information, that's certainly open to your group. But when you start to advocate policy positions, you need to make a recommendation back to your council, your city council, and then get direction from them.
I mean, there's a kind of hair splitting version where if we make a policy recommendation to council, that's then public information that we've made that recommendation, and we can share that public information that the recommendation was made. But it's different than like we would need the council to approve it in order for us to then go out and advocate for it.
So can I ask a clarifying question? So even if it's an already adopted policy, like electrification, would that then, anytime we go out and advocate for something, require us to go back and get, yes, what you're saying here is A-okay with the city, your advocacy on a particular policy that we have already voted on as a city, that is our policy.
Anything the city's voted on is voted on. So yeah, that's not the problem. The problem is if we're saying the city hasn't approved X, but the city committee are advocating for it, like that's us going rogue.
So would strategy be policy? Would program be policy? If you're advocating for either of those, is that now in the policy realm?
I just want to kind of like dial back the word advocacy. Like, so what if what we're doing is liaising? We're connecting with these other groups and we're finding out what they're doing. Like, what are you doing? Can we be involved? Will you listen to us? Can we be is that advocacy, or is that just a liaise, just trying to make sure that our city is included in the conversations?
Right. So I don't know if
Because there isn't a specific
official
policy,
definition
they're
of
just
information
maybe.
sharing versus advocacy, but advocacy would be we recommend, we are pushing for, versus here's the information that we've discovered. We can always share information and receive information.
Right. Okay.
We've been promoting some things from Sonoma Clean Power ever since we started as a committee. Handing out flyers, telling people about rebates for heat pumps, all that kind of thing. We've been promoting these programs. Were we not supposed to be doing that?
So that's sharing information, like we shared information, right? That's not advocating for a policy. That's sharing information with the public.
Okay.
Does you see the difference?
I do.
Yeah, I think I personally have a red flag goes off when we're advocating for policy. That's not something that's within the purview of our committee, other than policies that have been approved and put forward through the council. Does that make sense?
Is it an appropriate thing for our committee to approach the council person that is then responsible is on the board of one of these groups and say that we have an interest as a committee that the entity that you're on the board of, look and examine a particular program or approach?
Because that's asking for information and sharing information. Go ahead.
I am not fully cognizant of all the implications of the various buzzwords going. And with respect to that, policy, I mean, if we're saying policy is something that's codified in government as law or something like that. So I think almost never is it occurring. We're certainly not going outside of the city to suggest that the county adopt a new law based on our discussions in here. I don't think anybody's talking about that. So if that's what advocating for policy constitutes, I don't think we're talking about that. We're sort of saying from our deliberations as the committee within the purview of the city, we are interested in some of these kinds of programming through Sonoma Clean Power or RCPA or something like that. And we want to support the development of these sorts of programs or approaches. That doesn't really bump up against the sort of limit you're talking about, does it?
Maybe I can give an example that can help out. Sometimes you'll find that, say within a county, say within Sonoma County, there's discussion about a particular new policy position. And let's say among working groups of various cities in the county, there's discussion, exchange of information about developing a new policy. It's determined that that policy would be beneficial for the county and the various cities within Sonoma County. And oftentimes what you'll find is that an entity will take a position to draft a resolution, say Sonoma County. We're drafting this resolution, and based on this evidence and these facts, we think this policy should be adopted. And oftentimes, in terms of just making sure everybody is on the same page and respecting protocol, the entity preparing that resolution will send it out to the various jurisdictions, including the city of Sebastopol, its city clerk, its council, and they would say, we are in a position that we've had discussions, we've shared information. We believe this new policy or program would be beneficial to our county and individual cities. And we're giving you a model resolution to consider and adopt. And that's oftentimes how sharing of information back and forth develops into new policy and following, I'm going to say, maybe more appropriate and respectful protocol. An entity like the county and county staff would draft something, share it with its board, and there's support, and then it's dispersed out to the various cities. So that may be an example. I'm trying to be helpful. Not to say that exchange of information doesn't occur. It occurs all the time. We all go to various committees and commissions and whatnot and working groups, and we share information. But when there's kind of a new position, a new policy of substance, that's different. And that generally often is put in place the way I described it.
I think here, I'll try to clarify my concern is that most, like everything we're doing is fine. And what I'm warning against is this idea that we would go to RCPA and say, we, the Sebastopol City Climate Action Committee, are recommending the specific policy that as the basis of our deliberations, we are making an official recommendation to RCPA that you take this action or push this policy. Do you see the difference between like saying like we, the committee, are making a recommendation versus that's advocacy? That's what I mean by advocacy versus we're interested in this topic. This is what we've been thinking about it. This is, what we've learned from our research. These are the discussions we've been having.
Would you say that asking them to explore or examine something is appropriate?
Yes, of course.
Looks like you had a hesitation there.
I did hesitate because, again, I think as an advisory body, generally as an advisory body, if you get to that position on, I'm going to say, new policy, then I think the appropriate thing to do is to convey, Steve, what you just said to your city council. You've had exchanges of information with other working groups. I'll use the term working groups. You believe as a group that this would be beneficial to the city of Sebastopol and perhaps beyond. You then would recommend to your city council we believe you should take an official action or support this, and let it come from the council back to you and out to the community and wider public. And again, just, I mean, we're going around and around on this, but, where there's adopted policy, I mean, whether it's code or adopted policy, your general plan, your zoning code, so many different codes and policies. And if you're in support of something that's clearly adopted by the city of Sebastopol, it's not an issue. I mean, I think we're talking about as new positions may be developed, that you not get out in front of your city council.
So if there are
Yeah.
programs or strategies to support an already adopted policy, that would be okay.
Well, again, I think you're fine tuning this a little bit. I'm going to just say in general, I mean, I think we can go on and on. It's always good if you're sensing, and it's kind of a perception issue, if you're sensing that you're in new territory, to check in with your council. Let me just say that generally speaking. It's the old expression, perception. If you feel like you're in new territory, my sense is you discuss it here, you come to a consensus, you then make a recommendation to your city council and let them feed back to you and the wider community.
It's also important to remember that council did approve our work plan. So most of what we're doing is on the work plan that is approved by council. So we're not just out here making stuff up, Go ahead, Joshua. And I don't think we have to keep talking about this. And I'm sorry, I work for the state now. So
Yeah, not trying to overextend this, but if I'm understanding correctly, policy within this context means something that has been codified on a government level. That's an ordinance, it's an adopted, it's a plan, whatever it is. So it's something that a government is codifying within a written official public document. I don't think that any of what we're talking about reaches that level. If we're talking about working with these other collaborative organizations that are operating to connect, different programming ideas. If we go to RCPA is not making policy. Like us, they might recommend a policy now and then, but they are not the policy makers. And so if we have a dialogue with them, I don't think it verges into the place of advocating for policy.
Alex.
So I'm just going to pivot here. I guess I just had a general question, and this may be something you can answer. It might be something we hold till next meeting for the city council members. I was just curious. It sounds like there's a Sonoma Clean Power meeting that council member Zalman is a part of. Do you have any information on the frequency of that? Is that something that would be beneficial if we got information about what is discussed at those meetings, just so we can stay abreast to that stuff? Not that it has to be from Councilmember Zalman, but just making sure we're keeping up to date.
Yeah, they meet monthly, the board, and there's a citizens advisory committee that also meets monthly, and they have a public sign up so you can get on their agenda and newsletter, and they're very extensive reports that are produced each month for those meetings, and really gives you a clear idea what they're up to.
Alex, I would say that probably the best way to be informed is to go to the meetings.
So I think you said there's a citizen meeting, and then there's the other meeting.
The board meeting where it has the representatives from the various cities and the county there.
Is that open to the public?
Both of them are. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And they'll send you emails with the information.
So sorry to sidetrack you. Is there anything else that you wanted to cover regarding RCPA?
No, I do want to say that I think we're unique as a committee, that we have to be able to work outside our bounds to make any real progress. I think if you look at the rest of our committees in Sebastopol, they're pretty much focused just here. And by definition of the climate crisis, we have to expand who we collaborate with. So I get that it's a little bit squishy at times on policy versus strategy and collaboration, that kind of fine line. But it's where the action is. That's it.
It was part of our founding brief as well, to look for precedents in other cities and try to foster connections with them. So,
All right, we're gonna pull back to our agenda here. Any other comments from the public regarding the agenda item on our CPA collaboration reports? Seeing none, we will move on to chair reports. I believe I'm looking. Nothing else. Any reports from you, Joshua? And there's nothing from me other than I have strong beliefs about the word advocacy. So we'll take input from members regarding the next meeting agenda. I have written down suggestions to invite the Bayren water program representative. Zeno has asked to provide another RCPA report because there will be a meeting between now and then. And the rights of nature item may come back to the next agenda. They will decide later. Any other items that we want to add to next month's agenda? I'm assuming, Phil, you're not coming back with your pitch in July? Or you'll let us know?
Probably.
Probably
Yes.
yes. Okay.
Probably yes. I mean, we gotta do something, right?
Okay. Awesome. Lisa?
Oh, I was curious what's happening with our recycling presentation. I thought maybe Ambrosia was going to be talking about what's happening in the downtown recycling.
I'm not sure. I thought Ambrosia was going to be presenting on kind of the follow-up. We passed our local zero waste ordinance, and then there was a pandemic and we didn't enforce it. So I thought
Right.
she was going to be updating us on, is that what you mean by downtown recycling?
Yes.
Okay.
mhm. Yeah.
I thought she was going to be here to present today, and she's not here. So I will check in with her to see if she's going to come back. David, did you have something to say about that?
Not about that item, but when you're finished with that item, about another item.
Sure. Any other suggestions for next month's agenda?
Good. I just, I don't know where this fits in the conversation at all, but I think updates on, some of these bigger click items like zero waste would be great to do more frequently. Because, I've lost track of all of our different things.
Yeah, I think, Zero Waste had its own life and was its own committee. And then they got married with us, but they were very much driven by the citizen work from one particular citizen in this town who has had to attend to personal matters. So Ambrosia's been carrying that and from a kind of awkward position as an industry rep. So I think she's doing everything she can. If we, as a group of humans who move around the city and interact with other humans who might be interested in zero waste, can find ways to revitalize that working group with some more citizen support. I think that's kind of where zero waste is right now, is it's fallen on too few shoulders. Alex?
I had one thing, just thinking ahead a little bit as we get into a bit of a rhythm here in the years. The Gravenstein Apple Fair is coming up August 10th, 11th. Wondering if we were thinking about tabling there, and if there was anything we could do to prepare for that, or just what we were thinking about, if anything, just to make sure we stay ahead of it, since we'll call it 8 weeks out.
Yeah, that is a good idea. Does anyone want to, in past years, we've tabled at events with like a survey or rebate information. Lisa, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Alex. I'm not sure what we would be promoting or what, I think it was wonderful to be at the, not this year's, but the last year's Apple Blossom Festival. That was really a great and useful time. I'm just not sure about right now.
I'm just brainstorming here. This could be an idea to, I would say partner, but to bring CAR or have a booth with CAR, or see if they're interested in having a booth and we can support in any way. That's just an idea.
That's a
I'm-
great idea.
Okay.
Yeah,
We'll put it on the agenda for July, and if anybody wants to put something together between now and then to,
Yeah, meeting
Bring
with
forward.
Dory next week.
Be
So
awesome.
I'll just kind of put it out there to see.
so that's the type of thing that, usually requires the working group to kind of get ahead of the ball on this time frame, and then just bring it to us kind of as here's the plan.
Excellent.
On that front, I'm not sure that starting a discussion at the next meeting would put us ahead of the scheduling for the event itself.
That's why I'm saying that working group needs to go ahead
Okay.
independently.
Well, I think Ambrosia has a connection to the event through facilitating the zero waste aspect, and I'm not sure if it's still Diana, but prior, both of them would have been good to check in with ahead of the next committee meeting.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing is we need to have a solid plan by the next meeting or it's not going to happen. Great, thanks.
Any other agenda items for July? All right, David, go ahead.
So thank you. Item F on this agenda having to do with rights of nature. I'm assuming that we're not discussing this. I mean, obviously no action, but not discussing this because the representatives aren't in attendance, correct?
Sorry, I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting that we're tabling that.
Okay,
So
Thank you.
I should have mentioned it when we got there officially. Items E and F are officially tabled because there's no representation from their working groups.
Thank you.
All right, do we have any action items to review?
No, thank you.
Alex is going to do action. Alex is going to,
I got action.
Alex has got action. He's going to action the grab fair plan.
Okay. Do you want me to reiterate or?
No, I just was saying there's not no action because you're full of action.
I don't know. I woke up on the right side of the bed today. I still have to email Dina about collaboration, and the only other one I have is just inquiring with others about putting together a booth, maybe in coordination, in partnership with CAR.
Awesome.
And actually, if I could check back in on a couple items from the planning section with respect to actions that may be implied there. John, can we take it as a given at this point that we have indicated committee interest in being involved in the stakeholder and potentially technical advisor groups for the grant planning, and that the consultant will be informed of that, and that we'll just hear as that process comes together? Is that reasonable?
Yeah, and
Okay.
if I want to kind of send this out to everybody. If you could send me an email, just noting that you're interested in joining that group or want to discuss. That way, I can get a running list of everybody.
Say it again. Which group?
This was about the Sustainable Transportation Grant, just being sure that the committee is pulled into the center of the public process early on.
So we each need to email you to say we want to be on the stakeholder.
Yes, it would help because I don't want to throw it to the whole committee, and if somebody's not willing to or doesn't want to, I mean, I guess that's up to their discretion. But for those that are actively interested, it would be helpful to know who those are.
Great. And then secondly, on a similar frame, will we be informed as the city manager's recommendations about revised committee structures, as that moves forward? Will we hear in some fashion when that starts to be agendized for the council?
I'm thinking on that in terms of the city manager and executive staff and the budget subcommittee, as they come forward with a recommendation, it would be presented out as part of the staff report. So I'm not sensing that in terms of just how often you meet or putting out individual emails in advance, I'm not sensing that we would do that.
Okay.
I'm
So we
s-
can just expect to hear more next time, more or less.
Yes, or as that comes forward in terms of a formal recommendation to the city council at a city council meeting, it would be a part of the packet.
Sure.
Staff
I guess I would ask only that if it was going to the city council before our next committee meeting, which seems quite unlikely, that we somehow hear about that.
It would, just not to raise expectations, it would go forward with the staff report to city council when it's ready. So literally that working group, I can imagine will be working on all of this in terms of just so many different options and fine tuning those options that, as they prepare the staff report and the attachments going forward to council with a recommendation, it would be at that time. I'm not sure that we would have information in advance, and I'm not sure that we could really provide information in advance of the packet going out to the public and council.
That's not what I'm asking
Okay,
for. I was
sorry.
just saying if somehow that subject got agendized on the city council meeting
Yes.
before our next committee meeting, which seems extremely unlikely, then yeah,
Okay.
we would just want to
Fair
to
enough.
hear
Okay,
about that.
thank you. Sure.
Yeah, so just for clarification, I'm unclear whether you were saying that staff does not have capacity to alert the committee members if it gets agendized, or whether we need to just really be watching the council packets ourselves to see if it gets agendized.
I would watch the council packets. I think that's advisable. There are a lot of working parts on this, and I think there'll be a lot of adjustments probably right up to putting out the staff report and attachments going to city council. As we have time, we'd be happy to do that, but I don't want to raise that expectation because I'm not sure that we would, John and myself, would have that information in advance.
Oh, I don't think we were asking for the information in advance. It was more like the packet is out
Oh.
with your item in it. Like this is on this agenda.
That we can do.
Yeah, that's I think
We
what,
can do
what
that.
you're asking for, correct? Okay.
Got it. Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you. Sorry. I understand. Thank you.
All right. Any other concerns before we close the meeting? All right, the meeting is adjourned until July because we're still every month until we're told otherwise. So now that we're adjourned, turn off my mic.
Recording stopped.